Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I am your host Hajra Sati and joining me is Jawad Tehami. Assalamu alaikum Jawad, how are you doing?
Good morning, I'm doing wonderfully well. How are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah, lovely. So by kick-starting our day, I was going through my Instagram, Jawad, and I came across a wonderful video on the Al Jazeera, and it talked about how Marvel series is depicting different nationalities, ethnicities and races across the world in their comic series. So it was about how they are trying to incorporate a new character called Sabra into the Captain America film, which is going to be released in 2024. And it's an Israeli character actually that is going to depict the Israeli ethnicity and culture and whatnot. So a lot of people were leveling criticism on that comic series because they believe that this character is trying to whitewash the atrocities of the Israel because they are doing so much harm on the Palestinians there. And this character was actually introduced in the Hulk series back in 1980s. And it was introduced and it humanized an Arab boy about, how he is being killed by a black whale bomber. So a lot of people are saying that they didn't even introduce the word Palestinian, rather they were describing as the Arabs. And this is how I think Hollywood is one of the most sophisticated propaganda machines because they are describing a lot of things that go aligned with their foreign
policy. It doesn't make it any more interesting. It is highly insensitive. That is what exactly the Palestinians and the advocates of the Palestine cause on different social media platforms had been saying after this news was announced. Now, basically, this character that Hajar just talked about, Sabra, it debuted back in 1980s in the comics of Hulk. And it basically misrepresents Arab, and it doesn't talk about the atrocities and the brutalities by the Israeli occupation forces on the innocent Palestinians. Over the last couple of years, we have witnessed with our own eyes that how innocent people, especially in the Gaza Strip, that has been blockaded from all the sides by the Israeli occupation forces. They've been bombed and the infrastructure has in a consequence being raised to the ground as well.
Right, Jawad, and before that, the comic series were widely applauded for representing the Pakistani character into it and the way they represented it because it was a wholesome representation. But now by incorporating this character, they are getting a lot of flack for that because it is actually whitewashing the Israeli crimes in that area. And this is how the mainstream media is actually manufacturing our consent. And this was the term coined by the very famous author about how Hollywood is the very sophisticated machine that is manufacturing our consent and drilling into us what the big powers wants us to believe and not what we want to believe in the first place, right?
And basically the announcement of releasing this character into an upcoming movie that is going to be launched in 2024, it just comes before the 40th commemoration of the massacre of Sabra and Shatila back in 1982 at the hands of Israeli occupation forces in the Lebanese refugee camp. So it is basically that character. If just go at the outlook of it, it has got that particular Israeli flag, and it basically represents that agent of the Israeli spy agency Mossad, and that is working with the utter insensitivity towards the miseries and the difficulties they have unleashed, the reign of terror on the Israeli Palestinian people rather.
Right. And so now moving on to our top stories around the world and especially coming to Pakistan. So Jawad, would you like to introduce our first
top story? So the top story is that Prime Minister Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif actually is leading his efforts, the government's and the authorities' efforts to provide the relief and the rescue to the flood affected people in every area that has been hit by these massive and devastating floods over the last couple of weeks. And today he is going to visit the area of Sohbatpur in Balochistan province, and the Chief Secretary of Balochistan is going to give him a detailed and a comprehensive briefing regarding the measures which have been taken by the authorities in order to provide relief to the flood affected people in that particular area. And now yesterday also Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif also urged the cabinet members to come forward and play their part by helping out and assisting the flood affected people wherever they can.
Right, and it's very devastating to note that, Jawad, so many people have been affected by this flooding. That is 33 million people have been affected. and more roughly 1 in every 7 person is affected by these sort of flooding.
Exactly, and then there was another assessment which was made yesterday, a newer assessment, because the initial assessment by the authorities and the Flood Response Coordination Center was around 10 to 12 billions, and then UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres came to Pakistan on a solidarity visit. There was an initial assessment by UN Secretary General as well. That was around 30 billions, but shockingly, we have seen that the initial assessment by the Flood Relief Coordination Center is being estimated to be around $40 billion.
Oh
that's
God,
a big phenomenal amount.
That's a huge climate losses, and we will definitely talk more in our segment. Now moving to our other top stories, which is about the NASA and the exploration. So NASA is preparing to test its double asteroid redirection test, a mission to demonstrate the world's first planetary defense system designed to deflect an asteroid from a potential doomsday collision with the Earth. The mission's final on the September 26 will test spacecraft's ability to alter an asteroid's trajectory with a sheer kinetic force, flying into it at a high speed to nudge the space boulder off the course just enough to keep our planet out of the harm's way. The plane is to fly the DART spacecraft directly into the moon-led call and dynamo forces at 15,000 miles per hour, bumping it hard enough to shift its orbital track around the largest asteroid. Cameras mounted on the impactor and on the briefcase-size mini spacecraft to be released from DART about 10 days beforehand will record the collision and beam images of it back to the Earth. The asteroid that DART is aiming for poses no actual threat and is tiny, that has struck the Earth some 66 million years ago, leading to extinction of the dinosaurs. But scientists say smaller asteroids are far more common and are of great theoretical concern in the near term. Elena Adams, a DART mission system engineer, said they're hopeful they can capture images just before the impact. Well, Jawad, it's really nice how people are actually working so they can make the Earth more secure from the outside or from the spatial interferences. But I do feel that we need to do more to save our planet Earth, especially from the climate change in the first place, right?
Exactly. Whatever is happening on this planet Earth, we really need to take care of that first. We have to bring our own planet, our own home in order first, and then focus on the things which are happening in the outer space.
Right, right. And moving on to a third big development which happened in Islamabad, because Inter-Parliamentary Union Conference is going on and its main agenda is regarding the SDGs, and of course Pakistan is afflicted by the flooding situation and the climate losses that we have incurred. So to talk more about it in a more detailed and comprehensive manner, my team has prepared a video for that matter. So let's take a look at that.
Third Inter-Parliamentary Union Regional Seminar on Achieving Sustainable Development Goals for Parliaments of Asia Pacific began at the Parliament House in Islamabad. The seminar aims to highlight the vulnerabilities of developing countries, especially in Asia Pacific region, to the ever-intensifying impacts of global climate change. Addressing the inaugural session, Speaker National Assembly Raja Parvez Ashraf urged the participants to deliberate on the grave challenge of climate change to human security. Raja Parvez Ashraf said Pakistan is ranked 8th amongst the countries most vulnerable to climate change, despite contributing less than 1% to global emissions. He said it is also for the legislatures of the world to understand their role in ensuring effective mitigation of climate change. The speaker assured that Pakistan will continue to play its role for strengthening democratic traditions in Asia Pacific region.
Seminar for the Asia Pacific nation at a critical juncture, as only few days ago we faced record monsoon rains and melting glaciers in northern mountains that triggered floods. I would urge upon all participants to avail this opportunity to especially focus their deliberations on this grave global climate change challenge to human security.
Speaking on the occasion, President of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, Durat Pachu, urged the international community, especially the developed countries, to help Pakistan recover from the catastrophe of floods.
Climate change, it's real, not something academic. The consequences of climate change, it's here and affecting people like you, like many others across the world. The condolences to the family is important, but we need to talk also about how to help Pakistan to recover from this catastrophe.
In her welcome address, convener of Parliamentary Task Force on Sustainable Development Goals, Romina Khurshid Alam, said the Inter-Parliamentary Union and the National Assembly of Pakistan have organized this regional seminar to devise ways to achieve sustainable prosperity. Speaking at the seminar, Minister of State for Finance Aisha Ghaus Pasha stressed for the uplift of the agricultural sector and rural areas. The minister
You just watched the report by our correspondent Fahad Ahmed Misson. The third Inter-Parliamentary Union Seminar of the Asia-Pacific region is underway in Islamabad, and there is a wide range of topics which are going to come under discussion, and the delegations from all the Asia-Pacific countries are participating in this. And speaking at the occasion, the Speaker of National Assembly, Raja Parvez Ashraf, urged the international leaders to take this very much opportunity at this very time when Pakistan is hit by devastating floods, to think about the right strategies to put them in place. Let's talk about the significance and what possible strategies this particular region can adopt in order to mitigate the effects of climate change. We are pleased to have been joined by Professor Zamir Awan, senior analyst. Thank you very much for your time, for being at the show today. So starting the discussion with the significance of this particular mood, especially at a time, a critical time Pakistan is faced with, what do you think? What sort of solutions could be deliberated upon?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me say the International Parliamentary Union, IPU, is a very important platform and is very effective. Pakistan, availing this opportunity during the third Interparliamentary Conference seminar, has highlighted the current issue of flood in Pakistan. It is unprecedented. It is beyond imagination. Even that the Secretary General of United Nations, he visited the areas under flood, and he said that it is beyond description by simple words. In fact, some part of Pakistan were having 50 millimeter of rain usually, year to year. But this time, such areas got the 1,700 millimeter of rain. Is immense water, heavy flood. It is vast house, big land, houses, human lives, cattle, and infrastructure has been damaged. Definitely, these are the natural disasters. And this magnitude of this flood or this natural disaster is beyond capacity of Pakistan alone. Because we are humankind, we share the same earth, same universe, and it is the responsibility of the whole human being to come forward and fight against the human disaster, natural disasters, and rescue the human lives. Availing this opportunity, during this seminar, Prime Minister of Pakistan has shared the experience of Pakistan and some of the damages. Till now, the damages estimated are very initial. Some people say it is 30 billion US dollars, some 40 billion dollar, but the actual estimates will come when the water is dried off, and it will take couple of weeks or couple of months to make all the estimates.
Professor Awan, to add to this point, this damage is not only infrastructural, but the damages which are going to come in future as well in terms of food insecurity, and then the outbreak of diseases in those areas as well.
Yes, usually heavy rains and the floods are followed by earthquakes and the pandemics. This is, we are scared. If such things happen in Pakistan, will be again a big disaster.
And
we have to take
this
some.
is not a threat only for Pakistan,
Right.
but for the developing
Entire world,
countries, and
right.
especially when we talk about the Asia-Pacific region. That's why Speaker National Assembly Raja Parvez Ashraf has urged the leaders that this is the right time and the right opportunity to deliberate upon those things which would be affected because of the climatic changes that are happening. And it is because of the industrialized nations that such developing countries are bearing the brunt and paying the price.
In fact, the environment has no borders. They are not national limited or through sub-area limited. Environment are the common thing and shared by the whole humankind. If it is happening in Pakistan, might be next year some other countries. Even this year is not only Pakistan. The heavy floods has damaged Iran, Turkey, and fire caught in some part of the Europe. The climate change has impact internationally, but the flood in
There was
Pakistan.
massive wildfires not only in Europe, in Australia, as well as in Brazilian Amazons.
Yes.
In Pakistan too, for that
In
matter.
Pakistan too.
Right.
In Pakistan, this year there was more fires than the usual.
Right.
Anyhow, the climate change is a big impact on the whole universe, on the whole earth, and it is responsibility of the all nations, all individuals to come forward and fight against this climate change.
Right, thank you so much for enlightening us about the climate change. So now we are very lucky that we have been joined by attorney Muslim Akil, who happens to be CEO of the Research International Maritime Law and Practice. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for joining PTV World.
Walaikum salam. Thank you so much for having me on board. It's my privilege to be here amongst you all with high intellectuals who are discussing about the natural disaster and the calamity that has taken place in 2022 in terms of superflood. Superflood then has devastated the whole nation and in general and in the region in particular even. Thank you.
So Muslim and Akil Sahab, we know that we are being devastated by these massive monsoon season, and Pakistan is also receiving the aid because we need aid right now. But then again, do you think it's really the aid that we need in the long term? Because our climate change minister, Mrs. Sherry Rahman, very rightly pointed out at the climate conference in the Berlin that the global south needs a restructuring in the financial institutions that go beyond the pledges and they go beyond these sort of commitments so that they can deliver on the ground, because we are mostly affected by the climate change. And Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, also said the Pakistan, the region of South Asia, is 17 times more at risk because of these floodings.
Definitely, I cannot agree more to this because, when we are talking about the conferences that are now taking place, it means that we are moving towards a reformation phase where we are looking towards the climate change and the measures to counter those climate change. For example, the recent IPU, the Asia Pacific Conference that took place, was the basic purpose basically was to sensitize the international community, particularly the member countries of the IPU, about the dystopic climate that has induced the catastrophe in Pakistan. For example, there is this is the R, when international law should come into force and should urge different countries, different nations, and different regions to cater this menace of the climate change, because Pakistan and the South Asian countries, who have, despite of producing less than 1% of the world's greenhouse gas emission, the global climate risk index, still Pakistan ranks as the 9th most vulnerable nation to the climate-related calamities. And I was just listening to other honorable speakers. They were telling that the food security, the pandemics, and the diseases are yet to come, and all those loss that somehow is speculated about $40 billion or $30 billion is just the preliminary. And once the water dries up, then we can know that what is the total cost that we have suffered from those countries that are producing more than 1% of the carbon emissions to up to the percentage of 30%, and still they are not vulnerable to those kind of climate changes, but still we are. If you remember, the year 2010 earlier witnessed the massive displacement of around 20 million people as cause of super floods in Pakistan. And today, in present, the flood displaced more than 33 million people as per our reports, and have inflicted damage more than $25 billion. That is, again, the preliminary report, and we cannot say that it is the exact amount of the damage that has been caused. But one thing that I want to highlight right now is the possibilities that what Pakistan is going to face. Pakistan is going to have to import additional cotton that is worth 2.6 billion USD the wheat, like we were talking about the food insecurity, that would cost us around 900 million. And in the current fiscal year, 2022 to 2023, this equates about the USD 4.5 billion, and it amounts to 1.08 of the total GDP of the Pakistan. So this is the right time that when we, as Pakistan, stand against all those who are inflicting this and bring the course of law into not getting the aid but getting the compensation for the damages.
Right.
Mr. Muslim bin Akil, please stay with us. We'll come back to you. I have a very important question for you, and I want your take on that one as well. We are also joined in the studio by Professor Zamir Awan. When we talk about the SDGs in particular, when we hear the Speaker, National Assembly, saying that there should be focus on ensuring the SDGs, there should be progress on that, and the leaders should focus their deliberations on it. Recently, there was an annual report on SDGs published by the United Nations that showed that the progress over the last couple of years has slowed down because not of the COVID pandemic only, but also because of the conflict and as well as because of the climate change. Now, the progress over the last couple of years which has been achieved is definitely going to nosedive, and they fear that these SDGs are not going to be met till the deadline, that is 2030. So Pakistan has been doing wonderfully well over the last couple of years regarding SDGs. Now, having been hit with these massive floods, all that progress has been reversed. People are going to fall down the poverty line as well. Food insecurity is going to hit the doors. There is going to be less access to the better health facilities as well. How do you think Pakistan is going to cope with that?
Sustainable development goals is a high target, and Pakistan was doing quite well. Unfortunately, the COVID has impacted. The flood has a big impact on slowing down to achieve these goals. Anyhow, I think that it is the collective efforts of the all nation, especially the Asia Pacific nation. They should also come forward, and we should cooperate with each other to achieve these SDGs in time. Pakistan is a hard-working nation, and we can survive under any circumstances. We will play our role, that the hard work and the good policies, and we also hope that our partner countries and the international community, especially the Asia Pacific nation, should also assist Pakistan, and we will also be cooperating with them. It is the collective responsibility and collective efforts to achieve these goals. I'm optimistic Pakistan will, at the end of the day.
Inshallah, we also wish the same. But again, like Jawad very aptly mentioned, that we're going to face a lot of challenges because these flooding have always also reversed the gains that we have made from the SDGs. Now, coming back to Muslim bin Akil Saab, so I really wanted to ask you that as you're aware that the Inter-Parliamentary Union Conference is going on, and Pakistan has been successful to generate that narrative around the climate change. But do you think that we can get the desired momentum out of it? Do you think this is not just talk and promises and pledges? Can we deliver beyond that and walk the talk actually when it comes to the fight against the climate change?
Thank you very much for getting back again. Here I would like to quote Mr. Teodoro Pokache, who is the president of Inter-Parliamentary Union, and he's also the member of the Parliament of Portugal. And he clearly stated in the event that the event is to be highly, hopefully proving the vital and the pivotal for attracting the support for the flood victims of the country. Since you know that it is a fifth generation hybrid warfare, and it's all about the narrative building and putting up the narrative in front of the world if in order to we want to execute something. For me, I might be optimistic, but the factual ground is that yes, to the date, we need to have such more things, and these things are the only viable solution to all these catastrophes that we are facing right now, or God forbid we have to face in near future if we do not make clear policies or formulate the legislation accordingly.
Muslim, beg your pardon for the interruption. Now, when we talk about UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who was here in Pakistan on a solidarity visit, he gave a statement that said that it is not the matter of generosity but matter of justice. Since you deal in international law and with the international stakeholders, Do you think, because in the past we have seen there's been resistance from the international powers regarding the Kyoto Protocol as well as the Paris Climate Agreement, as the US pulled out of Paris Climate Agreement as well. Do you think they are going to give a heed to this statement of the United Nations Secretary General and pay the reparations to countries like Pakistan, which are paying the price for the wrongdoings of industrialized nations?
Industrialization has always impacted, and there has always been a monopoly of those who have been in favor and who have been against. But talking about the United Nations, we only have a single international organization that all the countries around the world are respecting, and we should look forward towards the United Nations and the recent claims that had been made by Antonio Guterres, the Honorable Secretary General to the United Nations. And if not, then I don't think so that United Nations, if doesn't show up properly and doesn't take heed towards the countries like Pakistan or other countries in the South Asian regions, then there is any benefit to be the member of such organizations who cannot take part when we feel devastated and our dead bodies are lying under the open sky in floating waters.
So that is ought to be done, that should be done. Is there any specific international law that says about reparations in this kind of scenario?
There are a number of laws, but we have to see the laws that Pakistan has ratified. We have to see into the environmental laws. We have to see the international law where that supports the rehabilitation and those that are looking forward for the reformation after the devastations.
Right. So coming back to Professor Zamir Ban Sahab, that we have seen that how Pakistan is suffering from the climate losses, right? And the new estimate suggests that it's more than $40 billion. And when the things settle down, of course, like you rightly mentioned, that there's going to more better assessment of that, which is going to come out after that. How do you think we can make ourselves more climate resilient when it comes to dealing with such kind of climate carnage, and especially in the terms of flooding?
First of all, we have to decide what has caused the climate change. It is the rapid industrialization of the developed countries. They have ignored the environment and just focused on how to industrialize their country and improve their economy. These G20 countries are the 80% responsible for climate change. Once we have decided and fixed, the 80% responsibility of the climate change lies with the G20 countries. They should come forward and contribute 80% of losses and compensate to the victim countries.
But sir, we are seeing that there are visible effects of climate change. For example, Pakistan is suffering from massive flooding, right? Europe is suffering from the worst climate drought that happened in 500 years. Yet we don't see that we see sort of voices that are actually advocating for the steps that might reverse our gains in the climate change. For example, they're advocating for the coal-based energy, right? And that is also going to aggravate the situation, the environment, and we're going to witness more of such sort of new normal. Why do you think people are not acting on it?
In fact, the interest of some of the countries is to rapidly develop their economy. They ignore the rest of the world.
Right.
They just
Professor, to add a point to this very question as well, when we talk about giving a pace to the economic growth and development and to run the economy on efficient basis, of course, you need resources for that. There is a phenomenal rise in population across the globe. There is a huge demand. So production has to be increased at the same level as well with the same pace. Now, until unless you don't burn coal, you don't burn the fossil fuels, you're not going to get that pace of the economic growth. So at the end of the day, the ripple effect of it is going to be that the population that you have got, which is consistently rising on a geometric scale, that is going to face a huge hunger crisis if the production is not met or the demand is not met. So there should be a considerable amount of time in order to shift that whole system from burning the fossil fuels and coals to the renewables.
In fact, there should be a balance.
True.
We don't have the balanced approach. We are very much conservative and focused only on to what we get it now, immediately. We cannot, unfortunately, we're not far-sighted people. We just see that how we can earn maximum money just now, just today. There should be a balance, And of course, it is the responsibility of every country or every individual to improve the economy, and they should work hard and go for industrialization. But whatever they earn, a part of it they should fix for the repair of the environment, or improvement of the environment, or protection of the environment, or purification of the environment. So there should be some balance, not only gain,
Balance
and
is
only
of
gain.
utmost importance. Professor Awan, your point is well taken. Going back to Mr. Muslim bin Akil, when we talk about the rapid economic growth and the kind of the demand and the kind of exponential rise in population around the globe, it calls out for a complete revamp and the shift from burning of the fossil fuels and the coal to the alternate sources like renewables. So entire mechanisms need to be changed. What ideal time do you think could be required for shifting from this?
I'm really sorry I'm cutting you, Jawad, but we are going on a short break and we're going to come back and continue the conversation.